morning, everybody. Mr. Manuel, you confirm that you are still going to tell us the truth.
I'll confirm that I will continue to tell the truth.
Thank you. Okay, first.
Commissioners, I want to start by apologizing for the delay in starting the procedure. It was due to the fact that we couldn't prepare the bundles because we had disastrous technical problems. And I also would like to express our gratitude to the Secretariat this morning for assisting us in this regard. Thank you. Now, Mr. Manuel, you know and understand that this commission is looking into the rationale of the decision to procure this particular package, but perhaps more importantly also the question of corruption, including the secondary contracts. Now, we've heard evidence before that there may have been corruption in some form or another. The details obviously still unclear. So I'm going to ask you a very serious question, and that is, where did you get your tie?
I purchased this tie at a store. You can come and check the label on it. I don't recall the price, but I've had it for a very long time. Thank you, Commissioner.
Now, on a perhaps more serious note, Mr. Manuel, the first issue I want to raise with you is the question of approval by Parliament. What is your viewpoint on this? Did Parliament approve the strategic defence procurement package as we know it?
Chairperson, in my submission yesterday, I elucidated the separation of powers. And I referred to the Constitution that gives Parliament the right and responsibility of overseeing what the executive does. The acquisition is an executive decision. And that's quite fundamental in a democracy that's focused on the separation of powers, and I think our Constitution is abundantly clear on that issue. However, to get to that point, what the executive and administration sought to do was to embark on a very public process of both the Defence White Paper, which was a policy shift to introduce a democratic dispensation and oversight of our defence force, and secondly, a process of a defence review that changed the force design. So those were public processes, but having undertaken those public processes, the decisions, I think correctly, were executive decisions. Thank you.
Mr. Manuel, my clients will argue before this commission that it was necessary to go back to Parliament to get Parliament's approval of the strategic defence procurement, and I'm going to raise this argument with you. You will remember that the Defence Review specifically stated in paragraph 8 of Chapter 8, the approval of a force designed by the Parliamentary Defence Committee, Cabinet or Parliament does not constitute a blanket approval for all implied capital projects or an immutable contract in terms of the exact numbers and types of equipment. At best, it constitutes approval in principle for the maintenance of the specified capabilities at an approximate level. What is your comment on that?
Chairperson, Commissioners, I testified yesterday that I was Member of Parliament for 20 years until the elections this year. And I know that in the context of Parliament, there isn't the necessary technical competence to deal with these matters in detail. The key issue, and I go back to the fact that the Constitution requires parliamentary oversight of decisions. The moment you involve Parliament in the nitty-gritty of decisions, the question would have to arise, who oversees Parliament? And I think that that matter was discharged in the method that was used in the acquisition. Thank you.
Well, in terms of the defense review, and specifically paragraph 74, it was specifically stated that, and I quote, "The chosen force design option will become the object of implementation planning for the next decade or longer. However, the realization of this force design will be influenced by periodic revisions of the defense review and subsequent planning to reflect the continuously changing strategic environment and prevailing circumstances. The result is that the exact details regarding the type and quantities of main equipment will inevitably deviate from this vision." And now perhaps the most important part, "Such deviations will be subject to parliamentary oversight and stipulations of the acquisition process." Now we know that that did not happen. That was a process undertaken by Cabinet.
who that somebody is who may even have said. Clearly, seeking best advantage for interrelationships is part of this. And yes, those would have been considerations, but to the best of my recollection, the biggest consideration was the ease of transition from a lead-in fighter trainer, to a fighter plane, was that transition between the Hawk and the Gripen.
But clearly it was a factor.
I've indicated it would have been one of many factors considered, Commissioners.
Can you please turn to page 14 of the bundle presented to you? That is a copy of a part of the annual report of arms corps for the year 2011-2012. And it's page 88 of the report. It's on page 14. And under the heading Management of DIP Obligations, the following is said. The board is not satisfied with arms corps. It's page 14, Chairperson. Thank you. It says the board is not satisfied with Arms Corps' management of the defence and industrial participation agreements. One company has to date failed to discharge its obligation, whilst others seem to have chosen the areas and manner in which to discharge their obligations. It has become clear to the board that there was limited Arms Corps directed and purposeful action during the SDPs leading to the discharge of the DIP obligations. To date, Arms Corps cannot show the impact of DIP obligations in the economy. It then goes on to say, meeting with affected companies has only served to confirm this concern. It would also seem that companies charged with DIP obligations sought to exchange credits amongst themselves, whilst others acted as agents for other entities to obtain export sales for which it received credits for the entire contract value as DIP obligations. In some cases, some companies elected to perform enterprise development as part of their DIP obligations, but ended up buying out the owners of the enterprises they discharged the obligation, thereby defeating the very basis of the DIP agreement. These include, for instance, the Saab, Denel, Aerostructure, and Grintech. Do you have any knowledge of the fact that that particular input that was expected of Saab and BAE came to naught in terms of at least this document?
Chairperson, I'm not sure where Mr. Foss is going with the question. We're talking about a major procurement program. The page she refers to, page 88 of the annual report of Denel of year 2011-2012, is management issue. It doesn't impact on the issue. If you have had an advantage of NIP and DIP and haven't fully utilized it, it's quite a separate issue. If you've created the opportunity for it, that is an issue that happens at the point of collective executive decision. This is a management issue you're referring to. And management issues happen in a variety of areas. I could pick education and say, this is what education is funded at. There are problems in the classroom. Because it's in that realm of issue. So I'm not quite sure where this question is going. But I do know that there's been detailed hearings on the NIPs and the DIPs. I imagine that the matter may come before you again, Commissioners. And this is in the realm of the implementation by management of opportunities created. Thank you.
The point I'm trying to make, and the point that my clients will make when they give evidence, is simply that the investment by BAE SAAB in the defence industrial participation activities was neither ideal nor valuable for the South African economy, but they were chosen by the executive. In other words, that choice turned out not to be a good choice. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Commissioners, you could take the same example and apply it to virtually anything. I think in the nature of the beast, corporations don't like to part with resources unless you have managerial oversight at the level of detail that compels them to do it. That's an issue that I think is in a different realm. Perhaps when Mr. Foss's clients, the two, come back from their colonial perch in the UK, they may engage with us quite differently.
I will get instructions, but as far as I can remember, one of them at least would love to come back. He just can't find a job here.
Perhaps he doesn't have the skills.
Although he was a member of the ANC in Parliament. But speaking about Mr. Andrew Feinstein, he will give evidence, Mr. Manuel, that he had a meeting with you, and I will tell you when, just a moment. According to Mr. Feinstein, I just want to find the date. The Commission can just bear with me for a moment. If I've got my dates correctly, it's somewhere around about November 2001. You asked to have lunch with Mr. Andrew Feinstein, sorry. And he says in his book on page 177 about this meeting, I had greatly admired Mr. Manuel's robust intellect and his courage during the struggle, and was encouraged by rumors that he has never supported the arms deal in cabinet, primarily concerned with its impact on fiscal stability. Now, I have to ask you what do you say about the fact that there are rumors that you did not support the arms deal in cabinet?
Commissioners, mainly people who spread rumors are people who lack courage. So they use rumors to create division. Nobody had ever asked me for my opinion on these matters. But what matters is not my opinion. What matters is whether I was true to the letter and spirit of the Constitution that held us collectively accountable, and whether in that context I discharged my obligations as a Minister of Finance. In a democracy, the key issue, Commissioners, is whether you allow yourself to be persuaded on the basis of argument. I think it's also true for legal processes. Once you enter a process, you must be prepared to accept the outcome of that process. It's exactly the same. If we commit ourselves as Democrats, then we accept the outcome. The outcome is more important than the views that we start off with. Thank you.
So if I understand you correctly, and I used the word, I just want to correct myself, I used the word rumors, but there were also, I'm not sure if one can call them rumors, there were articles in newspapers quoting various people saying that you were against the amount that was going to be spent, and that you would put pressure on Cabinet to slash the defense spending down to 1.5% of the GDP at the time.
Chairperson, Commissioners, you know, Ministers of Finance, I think, are a breed of a special type. They don't like parting with money. And they argue the same, whether this be the Department of Health or Education or anybody. And the process is uniform. And so the idea that every department would get what it desires would not find comfort with those responsible for synthesizing budgets. I'm saying it's in the nature of the beast.
To get back to the lunch that you had with Mr. Feinstein, he says that there was discussion about the extensive work that the Treasury had undertaken before agreeing to the financing package. You were explaining that to Mr. Feinstein. And the reason why you did that is he was at that time part of the SCOPA of Parliament and actively trying to investigate the possibilities of corruption in the arms deal. And at that time, you then suggested that Mr. Feinstein should speak directly to the officials. Can you remember this meeting?
I remember paying for lunch for Mr. Feinstein. I even remember what he ate on that day. Thank you.
He then says that towards the end of the meal, you made the following point, and I'm quoting from what he says you said. We all know that JM, and that was what Joe Medici was known as. We all know JM. It is possible that there was some shit in the deal. But if there was, no one will ever uncover it. They're not that stupid. Just let it lie. Focus on the technical stuff, which was sound. Do you admit that you said this to Mr. Feinstein?
Mr. Feinstein, Commissioner, says in his submission to this commission that he did not record the discussion. It's his word against mine. And so I think that's the only thing that matters. These are his recollections, and if he didn't record it, it's his word against mine. Did he confirm to Mr. Voss whether JM was Julius Malema, Jabu Moleketi, because there were two initials, a J and an M used. Did he confirm this? Because we could have been talking about anybody that we know. Thank you.
The question is, did you say those words to him, whoever JM was?
No, I did not. And I am under oath.
Well, my client finds it interesting because you will remember that when his book was about to appear, you asked lawyers to contact him about a quote by yourself on HIV and AIDS, and you wanted it to be corrected, but you did not mention this particular issue. Why was that?
Commissioners, you know, there is an industry of people who write books about this. I'm sure that Mr. Voss, I saw about half a dozen books in front of her. They all quote each other. And so that bit used by Mr. Feinstein, I'm told, is also used by Mr. Crawford Brown, and Mr. Crawford Brown's book is then used by Mr. Holden. And so there's an industry like that. It isn't possible for me, given the life I lead, to read every book. Because, you know, J.K. Rowling has written wonderful books about Harry Potter. It doesn't make it correct. It's about the imagination of the authors. And that's what I think many of the books lying before Mr. Voss are about as well. They cannot be verified on the basis of evidence or empirical evidence more particularly.
Mr. Manuel, you haven't answered my question.
Which question have I not answered, Commissioners?
I will repeat the question. You asked lawyers to get Mr. Feinstein to change a quote in his book that connected you with a certain quote to HIV. You wanted it to be corrected, but you did not go to the issue of this particular lunch.
The issue that Mr. Feinstein withdrew from the book, that Mr. Crawford Brown hasn't withdrawn from his book, is a suggestion that A, I address the secret meeting in Parliament. Parliament has no secret meetings. And B, I am alleged to have said that we should not give ARVs to people who are HIV positive because they're going to die anyways. Now, that is so pernicious and evil, impossible to contemplate, and certainly not part of my DNA. And it so offended me and every part of my being that I sought to have it excised from the book. Mr. Feinstein acknowledged that he had no sound basis for including it in the book, and he and his publishers, Jonathan Ball, then sought to include an erratum in the book, and in subsequent editions removed it. But I think it's very important to draw a distinction, commissioners, between just the perniciousness of that inclusion and something that seemed like, a dinner talk, a lunchtime talk over just matters of generalities. I was not the editor, and I don't think it's my role in society to be the editor of all of the people who produce these books.
Thank you, Mr. Manuel. Just for the record, the reason why I'm referring to these 3 books is because we've been having difficulty getting documents from the Secretariat. There's various requests for documents. So until I get the documents, I'm afraid I will have to stick to the books. Commissioners, I'm going to
Just hold on, Advocate Foss. Which documents are you referring to?
I'm sure that there's been requests for documents. I was told by my attorney that...
Which documents are those?
Chair, I'm instructed that there's a schedule of documents that has been requested since February 2013 that has not been supplied.
Advocate Foss, I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. We've heard this story so many times from lawyers for human rights. The other day, I think 2-3 days ago, we asked them to specify which documents are they referring to so that we can be in a position to deal with that. I'm not even sure whether they've replied that letter. And what is contained in those documents that you might need to cross-examine Mr. Manuel? Because I see you're referring to that.
I was actually making a joke, Chair, but it's not really a joke. The problem here is that my clients have been struggling to get documents. There is a list that was supplied in February 2013 that we have not received. I'm not in a position to discuss the content of that list because I've not been briefed to do so. But I do want to mention that there is that list and that we are struggling to get documents.
I'll tell you why I'm saying so. Your clients have been saying that for the past 12 months. In order to put this matter to rest, I made an order here that they must give us a list of documents because our suspicion is that we have given them all the documents. We said to them, give us a list of those documents which are still outstanding. I'm really surprised that now you raise it in public that there are documents that are still outstanding from the Commission. Tell us which documents are those.
Chairperson, I beg leave to enlighten the Commission on this issue that Advocate DeForce. Chairperson, I beg leave to enlighten the Commission and to perhaps respond to Advocate DeForce. An impression has been created in the past and continues to this day, an impression that this Commission, for whatever reason, is withholding information that is crucial to the co-participants. This is not true. The letter that Ms. DeForce is referring to was addressed to the Commission towards the end of February. Among the documents that Ms. DeForce's clients requested from the Commission, they requested all minutes of all forums that were involved in this procurement process. When we received the letter, it was at the time when the Commission's approach was that it would call the complainant witnesses, the critiques. At the time, no witness had appeared before the Commission. In August, witnesses from the South African National Defence Force appeared before this commission, and they relied on minutes of approval forums. We've seen, Mr. Force is probably aware, that in all the bundles of witnesses who have appeared to date, there are documents. And among those documents, there are minutes. They requested all reports of DTI. DTI witnesses who were here relied on their reports. They requested minutes of the IPCC. DTI witnesses who were led by Advocate Skinner relied on those minutes. Lawyers for human rights, as interested parties, they invariably receive documents from the Commission. In fact, when Minister Ewin was giving evidence, Lawyers for Human Rights complained that they had not received the affordability report. I personally requested Cabinet to declassify that report. They received a copy of that. Lawyers for Human Rights recently complained that they were not given access to umbrella agreements, contracts. They have not seen the NIP terms and the DIP terms, and therefore they can't participate meaningfully. A day before yesterday, after these documents were looked at by Armscor, and Armscor, in its wisdom, redacted those provisions that they felt were commercially sensitive, Lawyers for Human Rights have received those documents. We are yet to receive a letter as the Commission from the Lawyers for Human Rights saying, we have looked at all the documents that we have received. These are the documents that are still outstanding. We are yet to receive that. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Advocate Mdumbe. Maybe let's leave that point. And Advocate DeForce, I would like to have a copy of a list of the documents that your clients are saying that they are still waiting for from the Commission. If we can have that before the end of the day, because they should be knowing exactly which documents they want from us so that they can be in a position to continue participating in the Commission.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take instructions on that. Can I ask that the short adjournment be taken? I just want to take instructions. I'm nearly, I think I'm nearly finished with my cross-examination. I just want to take instructions. Maybe the tea adjournment.
We'll take the tea adjournment for 20 minutes. Thank you.